Hello again, everyone. Sorry about that, my mistake. If you're watching this video for the first time after the live stream, I accidentally turned it off and I've had to start a new one. So go back and watch part one, which I'll label it, which is a brief introduction to the Mandela effect and how I feel it's affecting people. I've just played a clip in that part one from a young lady who is very upset about the effects the Mandela effect has had on her life and mind. And I'm going to continue to discuss this now with those who want to hop into the live stream and who have just listened to that. So I'm going to, as though I'm continuing. Sorry for turning off the live stream there, guys. That's totally my faux pas, my mistake. I wanted to switch back to this screen rather than screen share, and I just stopped the broadcast. But cut me some slack. It's 12:30 in the morning for me. I'm sure for my American viewers, it's something like 8 in the afternoon, maybe 8 in the evening, should I say, 6 in the evening. But for me, it's 12:30. I'm pretty tired, and I made a mistake, so I'm sorry. But to those who were just listening to that talk, shocking stuff, really. I mean, the poor girl has clearly been heavily affected by the Mandela effect. Say what you want about her own personal beliefs, know about being a Christian. It was being a Christian which clearly affected her more than the average person, because to her, she felt like it was putting her into a state of fear. And I suppose losing faith, thanks to the Mandela effect, which is never really a good thing. So obviously, I felt sorry for the girl listening to that. And the person who sent it to me, the clip of that girl, we had been having a talk, a discussion in the past about the problems we're kind of seeing with this Mandela effect arena of conspiracy. And when it turned up, it blew my mind. No, I'll admit, I find it a fascinating, interesting theory. And I don't want anyone to think what I'm saying here today is for everyone needs to stop making Mandela effect videos. Not at all. You know, I'm happy for any theory to be out there and talked about and discussed in the spirit of truth. I don't care how out there that theory is. But I do kind of want to make a plea to video makers who do focus on the Mandela effect is to be aware of how you're acting. Because if you're presenting this stuff with a spirit of fear, confusion, anger, you're kind of all over the place when you're pointing these things out. You know, I've heard some channels proclaiming that the whole reality has changed and they've lost their wife and kids since the shift. And that kind of talk, you know, is pretty terrifying for the average listener. And, you know, I'm not saying it's true or isn't true, but something tells me there may be some devious things going on with some of these channel makers and the Mandela effect. It comes with the territory of truth, you know, so I get it. You know, there's some people, I don't want to say if they're genuine or not. I don't know. But what I do know is it's certainly terrifying a lot of researchers in truth. Like that lady we just listened to there. I'll send links to her channel after this is closed, you know, after this is over. So you can listen, you know, go back and listen to maybe the video she's made about the Mandela effect in the past. Now, the thing is with the Christian researchers of the Mandela effect, I found they seem to, well, their mind is blown at the concept that the Bible has been changed and people are finding many verses in the Bible are not what they remember them to be. Now, I'm not 100% sure if that's true or not. I was never a heavy reader of the Bible until recently, when the changes started to happen, funnily enough. But I wasn't reading it because the changes had happened. I was already reading it anyway since about 2012 when I was coming around to being a Christian myself. So how would I know, you know, that things have changed or not if what I'm reading is all I've ever read? So I don't want to doubt those people. Maybe they're right. You know, maybe things have changed, but the effect that has had on many Christians has made them lose their faith, live in fear, and lose friends and family, you know, because it reminds me of when I first discovered chemtrails. Do you guys remember that? It was at the beginning of conspiracies, like an introduction to conspiracy thought, this whole chemtrail idea. And I remember being absolutely, you know, all over the place when I first heard about that myself. I remember being like, terrified, grabbing people, like saying, don't you see them? Do you not see these things? They're like, shh, listen to me, like getting quite in their face and angry about it. Like, you need to pay attention. Why is no one listening to me? Can you not see the obvious? Can you not see? You know, and of course they can't. And naturally, it puts people in a very alienated position of feeling and emotion. And that's, again, it comes with the territory of diving into conspiracies. It's not a joke. You know, it hits you to the core of your fundamental belief systems and your paradigms. And in the course of your, 5-year boot camp training of learning the truth, that's the training period. You're going to go through some heavy paradigm shifts from left to right all over the place. You end up believing this for a long time, then believing this for a long time, then rejecting that as nonsense and going to this instead, and then reverting maybe back to an old theory that, and you'll create a new worldview which you can base your life on. And as I said in part 1 now, which it is now part 1, you need to create some kind of map of the world around you so you can understand what it is in order to navigate the world around you. And if you're researching something heavy like the shape of the earth isn't what you were told, for example, this is just another extreme heavy theory, and also the Mandela effect, that everything around you is consistently changing, and what you remember things to be may not necessarily be that again in the future or on what you thought they were in the past. So how are you supposed to live in that kind of world? How are you realistically supposed to move and get a job and actually exist in a world that's forever just nonsensically changing around you, if you see it that way? And this is where I think is something probably worth mentioning, is the New Age aspect of the Mandela effect as well, that comes with the territory of conspiracy culture. Now, I've made a video in the past saying, truth is you have only 2 choices. If you're going to go into the truth culture, then there's only really 2 interpretations of all the world events and 2 types of conspiracies. There's the New Age perspective on conspiracy and the Christian perspective on what the conspiracy is. And that you're going to go down one of the 2, whether you mean to or not. But usually by the end of it, most people end up on the Christian side. I personally am at the point where the Christian perspective on everything that's going on and how to interpret the conspiracy is the most accurate, consistent, and the truth in my eyes. Now, I've been on the New Age side. That's how I kind of started this. The psychedelic New Age, Taoist, Buddhist meditating, psychedelic tripping New Age. That's what I was. I'm all about consciousness expansion and focusing on weird things like other dimensions and energy and what that means and geometry. I was heavily into all that. I get it, but I ended up, like most people do, this is not a new story, nothing, I'm not trying to brag like I'm special. This is people end up Christian usually if they follow the truth to the very, very end. But the New Age truthers online are usually the ones who flock most to these theories like the Mandela effect or the flat earth, or even chemtrails, or a lot of things about the monetary banking systems as well, and aliens. Now, it's a magical type of world to talk about these things, and a lot of New Agers who are heavily into the trippy magical concepts have been taking the Mandela effect and turning it into whatever they can imagine it to be with a crazy, trippy psychedelic minds. I get it. It's fun to do when you feel like you understand a lot more about reality than most people because you've seen a few trippy dimensions, So we get people trying to change the name of the Mandela effect, don't we, to the effect or the quantum effect. I've heard theories from some channels that everybody died in 2012 or something like that, and we're living in a computer simulation now, and everything's being changed. So these type of theories, Gnostic interpretations of the landscape we need to navigate, begin to arise with these thoughts, these ways of viewing the world. What we're talking about with the Mandela effect is no simpler than the Gnostic understanding of the demiurge creating a holographic universe to trap people like us in, so he can control us like some weird scientist looking down a microscope at a petri dish of scum. It's that kind of idea, or it's the Matrix idea. It's very similar, that we are in a computer system controlled by an evil, vindictive prison keeper. The Archons, these mechanical robotic creatures that want to kind of just feed off us for energy. So it's a grim outlook, no matter how you interpret these type of Gnostic worldviews. But the Christians understand, no, this is a creation of a loving God. And I find a lot of New Agers, believe a lot of things the Christians believe. Christians understand that what is physical is not necessarily physical. We understand that, quantum mechanics is the reality. We don't deny the creation and how it is, that it possibly could be holographic. We get that it's essentially code. We just accept it has a creator. and that it's a loving creator. We've settled on the idea that no, God is good. Essentially, we're not trapped in a prison, and He created us just to suffer. Essentially, this is far more complicated than that. And you know, what more do you want from Him? He gave us life. You know, what more do you want? You know, God doesn't owe us anything. He's given us everything already. You know, so naturally, with New Age perspectives and thinking, people don't want to imagine that they have a loving God, you know, because that puts responsibility on them. And New Age thinkers are usually very liberal, left-leaning thinkers, you know, socialist type thinkers as well. So kind of be surprising that, you know, they want to just not have any responsibility for their actions at all and defer responsibility to the government or, you know, the societal norms, you know, patriarchal structures of oppression, whatever they want to interpret it as. It's never their fault why their life sucks. You know what I mean? It's because some evil, ruling, overarching thing that's doing it to them. Now, I believe in demons. I believe there are demons out there, but, you know, Christians have power over demons just by the virtue of believing in Christ. So, you know, I usually find as a Christian, when I came to the Mandela effect, it didn't freak me out as much because I had a solid foundation to begin with to interpret what was actually happening. And I have enough discernment to realize if reality is changing like they say they are, it hasn't fundamentally affected reality as much as they say it has. Yeah, things are still the same. Cars drive on the roads. The sun rises every morning. People are going to people. You know, they're going to do what people do. Life goes on, whether or not things have changed or not. I'm going to try and get the chat up here, guys. I want you guys to share your opinions on this Mandela effect yourself. You know, what do you think all this is about? And what do you think's going on? Let's have a look here if anyone said anything. Nothing yet. I know someone said on the previous chat, though, you know, that the Mandela effect is a tool of deception by Satan himself. You know, it's there to cause confusion. And, you know, the true God of the universe does not confuse. He's a God of light. You know, He reveals truth and keeps things clear and straight and narrow. The only supernatural force in this world that's going to make things incredibly, you know, terrible and confusing for people is not the good force, you know. So could it be demonic in nature? I guess I've heard these interpretations, but I don't know where from, so I'm paraphrasing from memory. But I'm sure people have interpreted it as, you know, this is the veil lifting. This is God trying to show humanity in a safer way that, yes, the world is not as stable as you've been taught predominantly in the 21st century. You know, things can change. You know, things can be coded to be different. And the changes are so subtle. Like I said, they don't necessarily affect life as a whole, functioning whole, but they just subtly change the odd little detail here and there. Now, who would want to do that, you know, and to what avail? And obviously, I think that could only really affect people who are obsessed with things like movies, people's names, and trivial aesthetics, which hold very little importance to me personally. If the Bible has changed or not, you know, I understand that's still just a book. That's pieces of paper with ink on it. No, I'm not putting God's word down. His word is final. But a book is a book, not God. You know, and His word is written in our hearts. You know, we know what He expects from us. We have basic morality written on our hearts from God's word Himself. It's in us, you know, and it's not like that book itself is the be-all and end-all of the faith in God. You know, it's helpful, it's useful, and it can still be read and interpreted today in ways that still get the truth to people. It's still saving people. And let's be honest, we're in a world, in a day and age, where many people who we need to reach, the younger people, aren't going to read that book anyway. They aren't going to read. That's the level we're at now, people. That's how bad things have gotten, essentially. So what if Satan or evil, nefarious people have been messing with the fabric of space and time and trying to change the Bible? No one's ever going to read that to realize the changes anyway. People want to hear the truth from another person, not a book. That's kind of the level we're at now. And we're back to the oral tradition. And it's that's fine. That's how most religious beliefs were passed down in the past anyway, before they were put into some kind of organized canon. And it's up to people like us who have done the heavy research. You know, I'm not saying I'm a biblical expert, but I understand how to interpret the Bible now. I understand a lot about the conspiracy culture and how the world is run and who owns it and what's to come next. And, you know, even the spiritual aspects of the fallen angels, the Nephilim, etc. We all kind of know that now after years of rigorous research. So orally, we can share the truth regardless of the changes in the Bible. So I guess what I'm ranting about here is these Christian truthers whose life has fallen apart because of these perceived changes. It's kind of get a grip, man. Get a grip. You know, that's not at all how God wants you to react to anything in this world. You know, pick yourself up and carry on. Be the example in the world we're called to be, essentially. So let's have a look at the group chat here and see what people are saying. A few people are saying. Goatboy666B says, interesting name, I know exactly how she feels. Yeah, man, like I said, researching the Mandela effect sends people nuts. It's just, I'm not trying to put it down. Like I said, I want people to carry on researching the truth, but be aware that it's driving people insane. There's evidence for this. There's plenty of testimonies and examples of, you can see people just falling to bits over this Mandela effect to the point where they just can't function. And that's not healthy. It's not useful. It's not a good look to represent the culture either. It's not a good look to the outsiders who know nothing. It is not going to want people to get involved. People buy people, not ideas or things. The person selling the product is what's really being bought by the individual who's the consumer. So if you're going to sell something like truth or the conspiracy, you know, you need to present it pretty well, and the person who's the salesman has to be on form. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. That's how people work. And if we have people out there breaking down, talking nonsense and just in fear, who's going to want to be like that? Do you think someone's going to look at that particular truther who's a mess and a heap and think, I definitely want to know what they've figured out and be like them? I doubt it. So just be aware of that. You know, you're an ambassador for the truth. Once you know it, you have to walk in the world accordingly. So look here. God promised to preserve his word. That hasn't changed. Shadow in the mask. Yeah, like I said, I agree. But even then, if the physical book has changed, so what? A common morality is still written on us, and we have to discern what is and isn't good, you know, right from wrong. And we know that. We know when we sinned. Guilt comes in. We feel that. Even psychopaths know when they're sinning. They just don't feel the guilt, but they still know. They're not deluding themselves into thinking that they're doing good. Well, I guess they are deluding themselves and thinking they're the good guy. Usually they are, but they still know on a fundamental level that the right from wrong, you know. Whether they respect that is a different issue. Danny Turner, not one jot or tittle shall pass from the word of God. Well, like I said, if the changes are there or not, like I said earlier, I'm not totally sure because I haven't read the Bible prior. I can still understand what the Bible's trying to tell us. It doesn't seem to have changed the overarching story at all. Just minor words here and there, which, you know, if you focus on the one little bit, you're missing the whole picture. It's just still not very useful anyway. Bridget York, I don't experience Mandela at all. Yeah, fair enough. Some people don't, you know. This is why it's a curious subject anyway to begin with. And then to say, a lot of people in Mandela effect say, don't they, those people who can't see it are clearly trapped in the machine and their eyes are closed. And it's that idea that, well, I'm better than them because I have seen the Mandela effect. I'm special and they're not. And that's just ridiculous. That's, again, a very satanic belief system. So it's dubious. You know, you should just look at this Mandela effect and the ego it gives people as well as the fear. Something else to make it look suspect in my eyes. Jesus himself is the word of God. Amen. Yes, you search and search, and like he says, if you really follow truth, you find Jesus. The earth, however, is flat. Well, again, that's up for debate. yeah, it seems like it's not what NASA has told us. We've definitely been lied to about the nature of the world we live in. I am skeptical about all of it, you know, but I'm not going to be that guy who says it is this. I think it's such a big concept, and how the world is made is not something really I think we can fathom, because we didn't make it. I think only God can truly understand the model and the structure of this plane of existence. But I've never ceased to be completely and utterly amazed by how beautiful it is, about how incredible the maths and geometry and formations and coding involved in this creation truly is. It's mind blowing, and every day, you know, I'm thankful that I get to be a part of it. I'm grateful, I suppose. Who cares if some words are changed? The basic message is the same, Bridget York. Exactly, that's what I'm saying, you know. I agree. Let's have a look what else people have said here. Shadow in the Mask. Glad you came to this opinion. I've always been pretty suspicious. It's just so open-ended, like you said. People craft it from what they... People will craft from it what they will. Sorry, it took me a while to figure out what you said there. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's so open-ended, the Mandela effect. It's such a huge topic. And it doesn't affect me. I have never lost sleep over this myself. I'm too worried about more pressing matters in the conspiracy world. Something we're going to talk about afterwards. Paedophilia, for example, and the normalization of this thought process that's going with the liberalism that's rising in the social Marxism and the satanic propagation of normalizing things that are bad and making people think they are good. I'm more worried about all of that than the changes to things, objects. You know, I'm more worried about the effect on the minds of individuals. So we'll get to that later. Shadow in the Mask says, I remember my librarian reading the Berenstain Bears as a kid, and we had both spellings, and I'm pretty sure I remember her saying it's just to do with the confusing pronunciation. Yeah, well, this is the thing. A lot of these Mandela effects may just simply be mistakes people have made and copied over time, you know, and they've heard them say it like that, so someone else says it like that, and it just goes on and on and on until people assume that's what the original thing was. And no one's ever really bothered or cared to point out that it isn't, you know, until we have the internet and the ability to look back in time and look at any image we want from anywhere in the world instantaneously. So yeah, it seems to me like it was kind of injected into the truth culture. You know, it kind of came out of nowhere, and it was just a thing everyone was suddenly going crazy about. And there was people starting channels dedicated to the topic of left, right, and center, and you know, trying to dominate the hierarchy of who's going to be the kingpin of the Mandela effect, the go-to guy. And it was, yeah, it was interesting to watch. I think that's the best way I can describe that. What else have we said here? Thank God I found your channel. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mike, if you're sitting at Satan's table, he will remember you even more when claiming to be walking in the way. Best repent. Is that a play on people who claim to be Christians but aren't? You know, Satan will have even more of a way with you if that's the case. I think God is someone you should be fearing a lot more than Satan. I don't really care what Satan does to me. He's not important. Goatboy666 is talking about the flat Earth. If you look at the flat Earth perspective, beyond the ice walls of other continents and other civilizations, possibly this is where some what we call aliens come from. But what I've not heard mentioned, the possibility of people from that part of the world coming to our part and interfering and controlling with our lives and reality. Yeah, well, again, man, you've got to be careful with these theories. You don't know, and speculation is can be quite dangerous at this part in the game. And there's nothing you can do about it if that's the case, one way or the other. The only way we're going to really see any change in the world, if you want to change the world, you have to start with the immediate things around you and what you physically can change in the moment. It starts with the individual, and it starts with each individual affecting other individuals in their immediate surroundings. And that's the only way we're ever going to see any real change. If en masse people can start to do that. And a lot of people want to save the world once they discover the truth. They want to go out there and make major changes on a huge scale by getting into positions of power or influence. And that's when you start getting into this mob rules and mass mentality. Something like Anonymous is a good example. And it just causes chaos, man. And chaos at the end of the day is the end result these people want. So if you want to cause the least amount of damage to the world while hopefully making it better for those who are going to come after you, change your environment in your immediate surroundings. Clean your room first. Start with your own life. Get your own life in order before you start trying to change everyone else's. Otherwise, you just make a mess of everything. That's practically what Christ is trying to tell you as well most of the time. All right, guys, let's check the chat here. Right, well, I think it's probably time to move on to the next topic. We've talked a lot about the Mandela effect there. I'm going to cover for the next half an hour this whole paedophilia thing, which is getting really on my nerves. But then for the last 40 minutes or so, I might just answer questions on here, and I also might open it up to people to hop on and share their own opinions themselves, on the chat, talk on the camera and everything. You don't have to use the camera. But we'll see if we have time or not. So one thing, the reason I want to talk about paedophilia is I made a video about a year ago now. It was around about the time Salon released an article about a virtuous paedophile called Todd Nickerson. And I made a ranting video about how pissed off I was that this was even being attempted by a mainstream media news source, to normalize sex with children. And this character they were using was positioned to be kind of like the ultimate victim, Not only was he a marginalized member of society because his sexual orientation was that towards children, and people don't like people like that. This is how they're trying to soften him up to the audience, He was also disabled and he had a missing arm and all these other things, So I guess that was there to try and garner more sympathy, but it just made him look even more creepy and perverted in a strange way, It just, if he was going to be the poster child to try and normalize paedophilia, then I don't know what these people are smoking. Send me some, you know what I mean? Because that's clearly going to be strong stuff. It was madness, and I gave a scathing review to them in this video. Absolutely, I was so pissed off that this was happening, and it just disgusted me to the core. But interestingly enough, immediately I seem to have 60 dislikes and only like 30 likes, and it happened fast. I got a huge chunk of dislikes within like 10 minutes of uploading the thing, like 30 dislikes, like boom, and then more started to pile on top in big chunks, like 7 at a time, 10 at now I checked it today, and all the comments are really positive, supporting me, saying yes, paedophilia is wrong. And it was only the odd 1 or 2 paedophile in the comment section trying to say I'm the one in the wrong by saying paedophiles are morally reprehensible human beings. I'm the evil one for not being open and caring and compassionate and progressive about the whole matter. But most comments, 98% of them, were completely on my side. Yet the likes to dislikes ratio, you can go on my channel and check it out, virtuous pedophiles. They told a different story apparently, and everybody who watched the video was completely disgusted at me for pointing out that pedophiles are bad people. So that is telling me there's some algorithmic agenda to thumb down and make, because the more dislikes it has, the less it'll turn up in recommended feeds, to immediately thumb down anybody talking out against the normalization of pedophilia. Can you imagine? This is just evidence for the problems that we're dealing with, that pedophiles seem to be a growing group of people gaining not support. I don't think anyone really supports them, but gaining support by the establishment media and the establishments in general to normalize their sexual behavior. and to let them get away with having sex with kids. It's a huge deal. You know, when we're talking about something as stupid and trivial as the Mandela effect in comparison, you know, this is why it makes me think, like, man, these people, if they would put as much effort and energy they put into the Mandela effect, into exposing these pedophiles, maybe we could make a real difference in the world that makes it slightly better for those around us and those who will come after us. It might not change the world, but it's definitely an improvement. But as long as people keep quiet about these pedophiles and their rising confidence to talk as though they are an oppressed minority who deserves attention, then they'll win. And then pedophilia will be normalized. It'll be LGBTQAAIP, whatever it is now, but they'll add P on the end, you know, to normalize pedophilia. You know, they'll be considered another special group who deserves special attention and special, you know, care from the government because they are an oppressed minority class. It's just a matter of consent and sexuality, etc. Now, there's a video I'm going to show you which is going to disturb the hell out of you. It disturbs the hell out of me, but there's this pedophile activist online known as Amos Yee. He's from Singapore, and he was imprisoned in Singapore for having outrageous religious opinions, apparently. He then emigrated to the USA after being released from prison in Singapore, but he was then locked up for being illegally immigrating here. Now he's out of prison in America. He's living with some family, and now he's coming out in full support of sex with children and how it should be legal. And the levels this guy goes to is shocking, and you can just see the way he twitches and the way he spews his rhetoric. This man, if anyone's possessed by demons, it has to be this guy. Okay, so I'm going to try and play it for you now. Warning, you know, what you're about to view may not be suitable for most people. This is incredibly shocking shit. You know, this is real, disgusting, disturbing stuff. So that in mind. And credits to the guy who made this, as you'll see in a minute. I messaged him earlier today saying I'm going to use this clip for my show because I think he did a good job at breaking this down. But there are many people out there doing reviews of this guy right now, which is a great thing as well, very positive. But this guy here, Oginos, I'm going to play his interpretation of the whole thing for you now. Again, warning, you know, have your vomit buckets ready. That's all I can say.
So I watched a video, and he was reacting to a YouTuber called Amos Yee. And this YouTuber basically advocates for pedophilia. Like, just advocates for pedophilia, full-blown pedophilia. Not even molestation, just full-blown pedophilia. And yeah, like I said, his name is Amos Yee, and the video is called "Why Pedophilia is All Right." All right, like he's trying to reach the kids with his lingo. Unfortunately for him, YouTube has rightfully decided to age restrict this video.
Let's have a nice civil discussion on pedophilia. I've made videos and tweets about this topic before, but I don't think that the points I made previously will be as clear as the ones that I will make in this video.
Let's have a nice civil discussion on pedophilia. If we were to throw you in a jail and you were to say, "Hi, I'm a pedophile and I think that's all right," they would kill you. Other criminals, other murderers, other people, bad people would decide that you are horrible and they would kill you.
I went around calling everyone a fascist for those who disagree with me. Yeah, I don't think I should have done that. It seems pretty dickish.
Yeah, it seems intellectually dishonest. It seems lazy. It seems like some person who is trying to defend himself with shaming tactics. But anyways, let's talk about the real issue with you, which is your advocacy for pedophilia.
So people want to most accurately represent my position on this issue, cite this video. Take this video as a far better draft tool. Let's begin. First, we need to agree on just one thing, that sexual abuse is not determined by age, but instead on whether or not the relationship involves consent. Most people would make the absolute broad generalization that any kid that is below the age of 12 are not able to consent to sex. But then one day, a 42-year-old adult comes along and says that while he was 10 years old, he had a perfectly consensual sexual relationship with a 30-year-old adult.
I don't care. I'm not gonna sit down and have a discussion with a 12-year-old if he thinks or she thinks it's a good idea to have sex with a 30-year-old man or a 40-year-old man or whatever. I think that child is a child and he has or she has no idea what is abuse and has no idea what decisions to make specifically on sex. That's what I think.
10-year-old him was not traumatized afterwards. The relationship was perfectly fine and consensual, and both of them enjoyed the sexual relationship.
I would debate that. I would seriously debate everything you just said, specifically the enjoyment part. And even so, I would still say it's a child. You don't give everything a child wants just because he or she wants it. We know better. That's why 99% of the population disagrees with you.
And this is not a fantasy story that I just pulled out of my ass. There are numerous stories of children below the age of 12 who have had mutually beneficial relationships, sexual relationships with adults.
Yeah, so I watched the V part and I'm just gonna borrow what he said.
Okay, let's see the countries that you talk about. Hamadut, the Ungava Peninsula, the Angmak-Salik. Beautiful places. I think you should visit. You should go and suck a black man's cock while you're at the age of 10 so you can get his seed and the power of maleness go into you, right? Because that's their culture.
The countries he's quoting have, how should I put this? They don't understand human rights. They're not they're not first world countries. I mean, you have to be not sick like you guys to understand that pedophilia is just naturally wrong.
Whether you were biologically born with that sexual orientation or you were influenced by your surroundings, if you just have the desire to have a perfectly consensual sexual relationship with a child, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't agree. I think a child, I mean, how many times is this what I have to do? I just have to repeat over and over again. Because I think the theme here is that he doesn't understand that children are children, that you should just, by default, not listen to their opinions on matters like sex, for example.
And pedophiles, like the LGBT community, seem to exist in very significant numbers in society. Why should we immediately discriminate against such a huge group of people, say that they are scum and they should be imprisoned when they have done absolutely nothing wrong?
We see Antifa and people marching with Antifa actually holding signs saying, no pedo bashing. I mean, you think Salon just decided, I'm going to put out an article saying, defending pedophiles. You think they just wanted to go that way? That's their new angle? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me like they're catering to a specific group of people.
There are people who realize that they have a sexual attraction to children, but since society discriminates against pedophiles so much, these people contemplate suicide.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there. I don't care about the pedophile who decides to kill himself because he couldn't have sex with children. I am much more worried about the people who the pedophiles rape, who also end up killing themselves out of shame or trauma or whatever.
I do not want to live in a society where we condone this kind of discrimination and hostility towards a group of people who have done absolutely nothing wrong. This is vile. This is absolutely horrible.
The wrong you did was trying to fuck a child. You keep skipping over that and acting like, yeah, this pedophile is raping kids, but at the same time, look, he does his taxes, he goes to work, he helps out in the community. Who gives a shit? His fucking children. It's still a pedophile. Once we know that, all the other things they do is meaningless. The only thing that matters to us, to 99% of the society, is that you people are fucked.
If a child and an adult have consensual sex, they both film it, and they both agree that it's fine for the footage to be on the internet, there's absolutely nothing wrong done. Why should it be illegal?
I'm trying to debate this intellectually when we all know, everyone knows who's listening to this, knows that, I mean, if you came to a room, let's pretend you come to a room because you're in a motel and the neighbors are making lots of sounds, right? And you go in there because you're worried, and you open the door, and what you see is a man, an adult, having sex with a child. Now, what are you thinking? Is there any part of you at any point that thinks, I think the child instigated this. I think he made it all happen. He got this motel room, he got the camera, he made the account on some weird pedophile website. Everything is on the child. No, they came to it mutually, together. Society doesn't provide any services for pedophiles to attract children. So how did the relationship start? I mean, it's obvious that it's the adult preying on the child. So even if the child agrees to it, it's manipulation. The child doesn't have the capacity to make these decisions. They don't have the maturity.
In the US, for producing child porn, an adult gets a minimum of 15 years in prison and a maximum of 30. That is fucking insane.
No, what's insane is the sentences here in Europe. That's insane. They should be higher, even higher than what you just quoted.
Even worse is most countries criminalize simply possessing child pornography. Possessing child pornography, a completely non-violent act, whether you viewed it based on sexual attraction or non-sexual curiosity, in the US, you get a minimum of 5 years in prison and a maximum of 15. What the fuck?
Non-sexual curiosity. Yeah, right. I don't buy that in terms of pedophilia. I don't buy that in terms of anything. Let's say there's a straight guy pretending he's straight, and then he keeps on watching gay porn. I mean, he's not straight. Let's just be honest. I don't buy the non-sexual curiosity claim. And yes, I think you should be criminalized if you possess child pornography.
And even if I gave you the benefit of the doubt and said that, okay, all child sex is rape, and so all child pornography is essentially footage of rape, is it wrong to upload or view footage of child rape? No!
Oh, for fuck's sakes. I mean, think about what he just said. This guy's a first-grade freak with 55,000 subscribers. When I always quote subscribers, I'm not saying that's the only thing that matters. I'm not shallow. I'm just saying it's a shadowy, weird world when you can have 55,000 subscribers by advocating pedophilia. I mean, way to go, Amos Yamos Yi Yedli, or whatever your name is. You clearly have filled a gap that was empty, and all the pedophiles are celebrating for you. Congratulations. But you're still a piece of shit watching snuff footage, and I'm pretty much done with this guy. I don't need to see the rest. This is just repetitive at this point, and it's disgusting, to be honest. I mean, it's a pedophile. do you know why so many of them end up raping? It's not because it's illegal, so they have to rape. It's pretty much because kids don't want to be fucked by adults. They just don't.
So yeah, there's that guy, Amos Yee. Hopefully I don't turn the stream off this time. There we go. Yeah, so there's that guy, Amos Yee. I mean, come on. Seriously, 55,000 subscribers. You know, all the pedophiles have flocked to this guy. And the way he thinks is alien to me. I mean, his justifications are erratic. He made a big deal about it's all a matter of consent. You know, if a child consents to having sex with an older individual, then it's okay. You know, and like, I don't think he quite understands what consent is, and I'm not sure he'll ever understand what the meaning of consent is. You know, a child might consent to driving a car, but I certainly wouldn't let the child drive the car because he's a child and he doesn't understand how it works. You know, the parent is not should be able to understand. You know, people do understand. You know, that a child cannot make decisions based on experience and understanding because they haven't experienced anything. Ergo, don't understand very much. They don't understand anything yet. So to say that, you know, the child wants it is just despicable. Think about that understanding. You know, well, if a child consents, it's okay. Nothing wrong has happened because the child wants me to have sex with them. You know, children, you can get children to consent to anything. They're basically retarded. You know, a 5-year-old doesn't know anything. They are idiots fundamentally. And, you know, a bit of candy and they're in. You know, you can get them to agree to do anything because they don't understand that whatever it is they're doing is right or wrong. They don't really have any understanding of sexual organs, or they haven't been sexualized. You know, they don't get, you know, say the creepy uncle, you know, is there exposing himself to a child and says, if you do this for me, I'll give you a piece of candy. The kid's probably going to be into it, you know. Great, you know, I get the candy, fantastic. You know, it's easy to manipulate them and get them to consent. Therefore, we understand a child cannot consent to such a thing. But this guy wants to use that as his argument to say, yes, they can, and therefore, it's no harm done. Now, the guy made the example in this video, you know, the child will have no part in the producing of child pornography. You know, the adult has to do all of those things, create the website, create the funding for these things, get the camera set it up, everything like that. So to try and justify that it's okay is ludicrous. It's ludicrous. You know, it's the idea of switching good for evil, evil for good. You know, if these aren't the end times, I don't know what is. And what is even more ludicrous about the whole thing is channels like this get to remain up and continue to spread their filth. Yeah, truther channels are being taken down every other day for trying to expose pedophilia and expose the truth in general. You know, these channels, Richard from Boston's channel was taken from him, Call for Uprising's channel was taken from him. Countless channels have been shut down and silenced for, you know, talking about things nowhere near as controversial as what we've just witnessed there, you know, and not at all advocating such heinous things. But YouTube seems to be a place where, you know, that kind of speech is allowed. And this is clearly a symptom of a sick society that has been inundated with social Marxist postmodern indoctrination into moral relativity. That's basically everything is a power struggle between opposing groups of people, and the only reason anybody is on a lower level or oppressed is because there's a structure in place run by people that, you know, how can I explain it? Social Marxism. People put themselves into identifiable groups and then pit themselves against each other. Anyone outside of their group is the enemy. You know, and the real truth of you know, groups is the ultimate group, really, the ultimate oppressed minority, the ultimate minority, and this is biblical, is the individual. You shouldn't judge what people based on their groups alone, but on individuals. And that goes for pedophiles. You know, judge people individually, but it doesn't matter how you individually judge the act of pedophilia. The act of sexually abusing a child is morally reprehensible no matter which way you look at it, you know. So to try and say the claim that this has any moral standing whatsoever is ridiculous. But obviously those on the left, those indoctrinated in social Marxist views of the world, will view minorities as victim classes. And obviously pedophiles make up a minority of the world, a large minority it seems, but still a minority. Therefore, they can fit neatly in that the socialist worldview of being an oppressed class. It's only a matter of time. And mainstream media is normalizing these things. I see people on the BBC recently did a talk, as I watched on YouTube today, where they aren't going to prosecute pedophiles like they used to anymore because there's just too many to prosecute. So they won't be sending them to jail, but instead it's a slap on the wrist and off to rehabilitation for you for a month. And if you think that's going to change pedophiles or make pedophiles no longer be pedophiles or rape children, you're out of your fucking mind. You know, these people now have been told basically that they're not going to be punished for raping kids. That's definitely going to encourage them to go out there fearlessly and rape kids. I can't, this world is going to hell in a handbasket. It is falling into the fire. It is gone. Anyway, I'm ranting now. Let's check the chat section and see what people have to say about this. Let's look at reactions. The BBC is run by pedos and always has been. Former British Prime Minister Edward Heath was one. The BBC is clearly full of paedophiles. Yeah, I mean, we had the Jimmy Savile situation as well, where everyone knew and kept it undercover for so long that he was sexually abusing young children in hospitals as well. You know, even more vulnerable people. I know he got away with it till his death. The British royal family were all sick pedos, and yet they live off us. Don't forget the special friendship with Jimmy Savile. Yeah, that's right, go boy, I agree. Mike says they're pushing this on children and the parents who were removed from the home a long time ago and conditioned and indoctrinated. Well, yeah, where are the parents in all of this? You know, any parent that isn't paying attention to the mind of their own child, you know, it needs to be questioned about why transgender is a good example. We get a lot of parents now who, you know, their boy puts on a dress one time and plays with makeup. Now we have to say that person's transgendered and give them a sex change and put them through an irreversible, you know, operation and put them on hormone suppressants or testosterone because we don't want to offend the child and be considered a bigot for suppressing their natural feelings, when all the evidence shows that kids grow up out of gender dysphoria 90% of the time and live normal, healthy lives as their preferred born sex and gender. All the evidence goes against the agenda, yet we have these parents who encourage their children to mutilate themselves. You know, and it's these parents and these people who end up in this awful worldview, you know, grow up in this environment of social neo-Marxist indoctrination, who grow up to them push the boundaries even further and say, well, pedophiles need their rights as well. Shocking, disgusting, disturbing stuff. And you know, we have to keep talking about this. We have to expose it, man. We can't just let this stand. No, we have to protect and save the children. Without them, there is no future. And if, you know, if we let the pedophiles have their way, they'll grow up to be very disturbed people, and therefore the world will turn even more into a disturbed place. It's just a snowball effect from there. Shadow in the Mask says, ugh, hard to watch. It is hard to watch. That was hard to watch. That Amos Yee is insane. He's a disturbed individual. But he's just one example of many advocates out there. Just one. Exposed Secret Society says people hate hearing the truth. They do. They do. But this is one of those truths which I hope 99% of people can get on board with. You know, this is one of those truths. this is a question of morality. Now, obviously, you know, the postmodernist thinker doesn't believe morality exists. Good and evil is just subjective to your opinion, man. You know, there's multiple interpretations for any one scenario. Therefore, it's invalid to label anything, such as good or evil, because things can be interpreted in thousands of ways. You know, and that's a valid point, but it's wrong in the sense that viewing everything as multifaceted and uninterpretable makes your life pointless, meaningless, and you can't navigate through that landscape we're talking about. You know, you can't live life thinking that way. You have to categorize things. You have to put people into categories. You know, you have to do this, otherwise it's chaos. You know, and we know the difference between what is good and what is evil. We all know that. To try and make people change the rules on such a thing is impossible. It is not subjective. It seems to be some kind of objective law written into the hearts of every human being in this world, regardless of culture. Sin is sin. Let's see what the people are saying here. Sure Thing says, there was an experiment done with 2 rats. They gave the old rat the young rat's blood, and the same for the young rat being given old blood. And the results were the host aged according to the blood. So imagine them using other tools for health, like electromagnetism, and using baby blood to keep them young. Well, this is getting onto the satanic pedophilia and another dark, heinous problem that does kind of need to be dealt with in the world. You know, that Satanists rule a lot of things. You know, they have put themselves into positions of power and authority in many organizations, and they sacrifice things to the devil. That's basically it. That's the bottom line. And the best sacrifice, as far as I'm concerned, from their perspective, is a young boy, preferably around or under the age of 5. And rape and torture the boy, put it in as much pain and agony as you possibly can before you snuff it out, and then you drink the blood. That's the ritual. That's the sacrificial ritual of children. And the Satanists do this in the world. You know, we're talking about these paedophile advocates and, you know, low-level pedophiles who just rape children and, you know, get caught by the police and end up in prison. These people who aren't involved in satanic ritual abuse, they are, although a huge, growing, disgusting problem, if you let them get away with it, you're actually normalizing something even bigger than that, you know, the satanic aspect. And this is why I believe this is satanically driven, these narratives. Now, they're pushing pedophilia because this is what the Satanists do, and they want to normalize their belief system so more people follow it. You know, and if you can get people to no longer see children as sacred, and if you can get them to be so amoral that they don't know right from wrong, maybe you could convince them in the future. Maybe not now, but they're working on it slowly, bit by bit, you know, one brick at a time. Maybe they could convince people in the future that it's also okay to kill a child and drink their blood because it will make a certain individual live longer, let's say, if it does have this magical property, which the Satanists believe it does. And people will say, well, that's a good thing because it means brilliant people will get to live longer and give us more things in the world with their brilliant minds, you know, inventors, let's say, or you know, one of the brilliant economists or whatever the people that a king or a ruler gets to live much longer because they're such a wonderful person. Before it gets to the individuals where, well, everybody gets to live longer, you know, life extension for everybody. Isn't longer life much better? We need less children in the world anyway to use up all our resources. They'll just create more carbon, and, you know, the carbon footprints will destroy the earth. It's better to kill them young and drink the blood so those with the knowledge can live for longer. You know, can you see the justifications I'm making here are not far off as conversations in the near future? Just the amorality of this situation is being seeped into the minds of many. You know, many people are dropping what it is to be right and wrong. And these type of talks, this hypothetical I'm coming up with, are soon to be realities. And we're seeing it already. We're seeing the normalization of pedophilia. We're seeing them crawl out of the disgusting holes they've been groveling in for years, proud and loud, you know. claiming to be on the side of moral virtue and freedom. What about the children's freedom? Anyway, let's go back to the chat here and see what people are saying. I might start wrapping this up soon, guys. Like I said, it's quite late for me now. It's 1:25 in the morning. I want you guys to leave me your opinions in the comment section now, just to wrap up. I don't think I'll be doing any calls. I'm quite tired and pissed off. This topic always gets me riled up every time. I go absolutely insane over this. I'm probably not the best person to make videos against these people because I can't keep my cool. I can't do it. Let's see what you guys have to say anyway. Let's have a look in the chat section. Please leave your comments, guys. Mike says, no way to clean it up. As you notice, they don't care if you know they are evil. Well, this day and age, yeah, they don't care if they are known to be evil. Like, it's being normalized, and being evil is seen as cool. I mean, just look at TV, the constant death, misery, and, you know, the glorification of death and misery and pain, and a narcissistic control is glorified in every Netflix show that's ever existed, if you care to look. It's sickening. Shadow in the Mass says, I live near a city in Ontario where women and kids get abducted right off the street every day. Scary stuff, man. Keep an eye on your own children. Keep them close. People are getting kidnapped like crazy all over. They need Soylent Green. Oh, yeah, I know. This is where it gets a bit crazy for most people. It's all well and good fighting the open, outspoken pedophiles. But the ones that are behind the scenes, who are literally eating children, you know, and sacrificing them in the most ritualistic, heinous, purposefully painful way, it can be too much for most people to handle. It's a big deal, you know. It's horrific. A little off topic, but kids are murdered, go missing, or worse. But why has the Maddie McCann went missing? Why has it been such a whole profile event until this day? Is this media code for pedo rings government? Well, the Mandela McCann case, you know, a lot of things have come out recently about the whole Pizzagate scandal. You know, that was, I think, was a whole normalization event to introduce to the world that, you know, pedophile rings happen, but the people who may be involved, even though they're just allegations, are normal people who are, you know, contributors to average normal society, like a humble pizza maker or even a politician. You know, they're normalizing it with those type of events. You know, and the person who went out there to get revenge, you know, that whole staged event, from what it seemed like to me, you know, got caught, and the full justice system came down. I mean, that was a warning against vigilantes. Anyone who comes after pedophiles will be dealt with the full strength of the law. You know, big psychological event ingrained in the subconscious of people. But yeah, the Madeleine McCann thing. I think that's more like it keeps people's attention focused on just one paedophilic event, so they'll never bother to get involved with more. You know, it's a bread and circus distraction, long drawn out media soap opera, the Madeleine McCann story, and you know, totally suspect. The parents clearly were involved in some way. Tony Podesta was as well, along with that paedophile who had his mansion not far from McCann's residence. You know, the pictures of them have been released. The drawings of the suspects, who the people who were seen, look just like Tony Podesta and his brother. So I think that was a high-profile child ritual sacrifice, which was made into a media psyop. It's that simple. You know, they got away with it, and they're laughing at us. The general public believes a completely different narrative. Disgusting. Bridget York says, Jesus, please protect the children from the Satanists. Amen. Jesus, please hear us. Mike says, no way to clean it up. As you notice, they don't care if they know they're evil. So I've said that one already. Sure Thing says, I wouldn't doubt 1 second that the highest of elite are immortals. You know, possibly. And if they've done that through, you know, cloning means consciousness transferring into a new body every so often, or the drinking of, you know, human children, or demonic power given to them through the ritual sacrifice of the innocents. It's possible. You know, it is possible. This world is a mysterious place, and, you know, people don't just make deals with the devil for nothing. You know, it better be worth it to give up your soul like that. And immortality is a pretty sweet deal. And it was a deal that was offered in the Garden of Eden. You know, you will be as gods. You know, you will live forever. So it won't surprise me. That's why they're exposing themselves now. I think they want us to know because we riot. They will get martial law and then the New World Order. Because they spent years hiding to get into the position they are in, to get to the point where they can expose themselves because they own the world. Well, it's called the externalization of the hierarchy. I think Helena Blavatsky wrote about this. And it's about that, yeah, they've planned 100 years in advance to reveal themselves eventually, but only once they've got the public through witchcraft and brainwashing through the media to a point where they'll accept them once they reveal themselves. We see a similar tactic being used to get people ready for when the demons and the fallen angels reveal themselves as well, by constantly showing aliens and demons in movies and films, and often making them the anti-hero, or in some cases the good guy. That's very common now, that the demon or the man who has merged himself with demonic power, or the man who has merged himself with technology to become the hero that saves everybody from themselves. So, you know, demons aren't evil, they're just misunderstood interdimensional creatures. So when people, when they reveal themselves, people have their arms open, you know, like, yes, finally they're here. It's getting that way. You know, that's definitely what they're aiming for. And as long as people like me are around saying, don't be fooled, guys, sharpen up and start reading your Bible, for God's sake, I think that should hopefully push back on all of this. But are we going to be able to stop it, man? I'm not sure I can answer that one. It's like Laura L's joined the chat, and she seems to have a few new opinions. You know, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Laura, but it's hard to be the guy to say such things. We'll call them them, okay? Now, them, in brackets, you know, it's them. It's illegal to point out, so fucking be it. They made the laws to prohibit the truth. What else did you say? You have to look up black papal nobility. The black stands for secret, not black of skin. They run mental harassment, enslavement, children's kidnapping services, and social conform, or else. Bridget York says Podesta and Alifantis have a kill room. Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. No lawyer with any standing or anything at all will touch a case against this psychological mafia from hell. Talking about them again. Yeah, I understand. I'm from British Columbia. I speak the truth every chance I get. I realized when I was talking to an old expletive who likes AI, wants the removal of free speech and called it kindness. What a douchebag. He promoted communism and tried to humiliate me by trying to get me to agree with his degrees and, like him, should make decisions, and it would be unkind to give the choice to people like me. So he's saying people like me or you, Laura, shouldn't be able to make decisions, you know? Because we're the evil Nazis, aren't we? The uncaring white supremacists or whatever it is. You know, and we're the supporters of hate speech in their eyes, you know. Free speech is all speech. whether it offends you or not. And if they can't understand that, then they're the real Nazis. That's just, they are the fascists, you know, that's how it truly is. But they've been convinced they're the good guys. Moral virtue, warriors of virtue. You know, of virtue. Oh dear. Hypocrites is a good way to describe them. He thought chemtrails were a good thing. I then realized he was a them. But he looked normal and white. When it comes to they, they'll have their day. You know, it says in the Bible, I know thy works, those who claim to be Jews but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. You know, they don't get away with what they're doing. And there will come a point where the truth will be out. And I don't know what's going to happen when that happens, but their kingdom will not stand. You know, it's a house built on sinking sand. They aren't going to last very long. Shadow in the Mask says, here in Canada, we're just so smug we don't even bother thinking critically anymore. Well, you have Justin Trudeau as your prime minister, and man, I feel so sorry for you. He is a clown. Like, people think Donald Trump is bad. It's kind of, are you kidding me? Justin Trudeau is a joke. An absolute joke. You know, it's just the current year, right? You know, let's just do all these crazy things. Let's drop all our borders, let all these Muslims in, homosexual rights for everybody, pedophilia, you know, pedophiles, we see you, man, you're on all this, or we've got your backs. Free speech? Nah, hate speech. We don't need any of that. You know, Canada has lost their minds. And, you know, they come from British culture, you know, and they're just following our example. We're just as bad as them, except we have a government of incredibly corrupt arseholes. I can't really describe them as anything else. They don't even pretend to be nice. At least Trudeau pretends to be loving, nice, and happy. Jesus. Let's have a look at the live chat here, guys, because I'm going to start rolling this up soon. Goat Boy made a good point here. The abduction of 10 children during a royal visit to the Kamloops residential school in mid-October 1964, when both the Queen and Prince Philip were in, the children were never returned. So, yeah, these were the Indian children, weren't they? The Native American children. 10 of them went missing after the royal family visited, and I'm pretty sure the bones were found underneath that very place years afterwards, the bones of the children. So they were ritually, satanically, probably raped, tortured, and sacrificed. That's the truth. That's what they do to these kids. And they probably drank their blood too. What else have we got here? Sorry, guys. I get lost in the chat. It's going off. Laura, going on from talking to this person, I tried to point out the closer metal is to the sun, the faster the atmosphere heats up. To talk about chemtrails here, you try to explain how, you know, chemtrails are a terrible thing and they're going to destroy our atmosphere. And he says it kills the leaves on the trees and global warming is... Then I said it kills the leaves on the trees and makes global warming worse. But he tried to discredit it. And then he said, in hindsight, it's a beautiful thing. So I'm guessing he probably believes that human beings need to be wiped off the earth anyway because we're a cancer. It reminds me of the Georgia Guidestones, you know, which showed that we need to keep humanity under 500 million, which is a 6.5 billion decrease in population. There's a lot of people that he wants to kill. Those people want to kill in order to have their utopia. But the way communists think and socialists think, that it's not beyond them to commit mass genocide and wipe out hundreds of millions of people. in whatever means possible. Not at all, you know. And that's the political system or belief system I believe is going to be used by them to destabilize Western cultures and get us all to kill each other off. The oppressed will kill off all the evil oppressors. And as it stands, straight white European men who act like men are the #1 enemy and the cause of all the evil in the world right now. So it wouldn't surprise me if we were the ones which were considered the oppressor class that needs to be wiped out for society to be better. Now, I'm not trying to play any supremacist card here, but Western culture is quite clearly and evidentially, through what we've produced and the things we do, a superior culture to many in this world. And I understand that the Western culture is considered a huge threat to many power plays in this world because of how successful we are in producing a good, safe, consistent cultures with high moral standards. It's not easy to control that type of culture. Now, I can see how they will cause a destruction by creating a destabilization with the people within those cultures first. So communism makes white males hate other white males because they identify with a particular ideology like leftism and liberalism. And anybody who isn't in that in-group is a Nazi. So it's justified to kill Nazis, right? You know, so we'll have white people killing white people. And this is all part of the separate, destroy, you know, order out of chaos agenda. But it's also the rest of the world and those of other nationalities and races are being also programmed to hate white people as a whole. So again, power groups, groups against groups, not individuals against individuals. You know, by the virtue of me, for example, being white means I am a part of all white people and all white people are the same. Therefore, we can kill them all because they are all equally evil. You know, this is the danger of groupthink. This is the danger of the social Marxist ideology. It makes people not understand that an individual is an individual and should be judged on the virtue of their actions, not the color of their skin. They don't get that. We used to. Martin Luther King had a dream, you know, but it was just that in his eyes. It was just a dream. That's not the reality we're living in today. You know, it's a touchy subject. It's a tough one to tackle. I'm not the expert, but I can see with my own eyes where it's going. Let's see what other people in the chat here are saying. Laura L says, someone tried to convince me of white privilege. My grandfather was sent to Canada from an orphanage as slave labor, then joined the army at 15 to get out of it. Where did he get his free welfare? You know, yeah, is that guy privileged? I mean, I see so many homeless people in my own city and all over the UK, and I look at these people and think, God, where's their white privilege? You know, it's nonsense. No, it doesn't exist. It's white privilege is a racist slur against white people. It's racism against white people. It's an offensive racist slur. You know, it's pigeonholing a person who has white skin as evil and deserving of abuse because they have white privilege. You know, it's racism in its purest form. And obviously they argue on the other side that black people can't be racist because racism is defined by institutional power. Now that's a word game there. That's not true. You're trying to redefine what it means to be racist. That is not at all what racist really means, you know. And just saying so doesn't make it so. However, if they continue to say so for such a long time and, you know, manage to indoctrinate a new generation of children to believe that that's what racism means, it's institutional, and therefore because white people have all the power, they are the only ones who can be oppressive and therefore racist, then the definition will be changed, you know. And they come to the language first in any Orwellian society. That's what 1984 is about, you know, removing words from the English language and changing words so people can no longer communicate their dissatisfaction because the words for such a thing don't exist anymore. But rather than removing words right now, they're changing words. And if we don't say no and use those words as they should be and define our terms correctly, then they win, and we won't even have the capacity to communicate the problems we see in the world anymore to people if we don't stay on top of this. And now we're talking about cats. It's not the internet without cats, is it, guys? Cats are ninjas. My old cat was too fat to always land on their feet. Yeah, white privilege is a lie, as is anti-Semitism. See, I saw something recently that 4chan did, which I thought was quite clever. Very simple activist technique, but they basically just in black writing on a whiteboard said, "It's okay to be white," and just posted it all over campuses. It's okay to be white. And they did it on purpose to troll the left, because they knew full well the left would call it racist and freak out over it. And the left took the bait, and the news ran with it, and they started saying racist posters all over the campuses. But they put their foot in their mouth, because it's not racist to say it's okay to be white. What's the antithesis to that? It's not okay to be white. If you're upset and offended at the sentence, "It's okay to be white," that means you believe it is not okay to be white. And the reaction proved that theory and exposed themselves to millions of people who have no idea about it yet, that, you know, wait a minute, what? It's not okay to be white? What are these people saying? You know, they expose themselves because they are so ideologically possessed. They can't see the ridiculousness in their own beliefs sometimes. And they are so gun-ho about their beliefs that they very quickly don't realize they're making fools of themselves and falling for such obvious traps. So I was happy with that. That was a win for free speech and for white people. So I can't even believe I'm talking about this. You know, it's not really, race is fundamentally unimportant when it comes to salvation. You know, it's not, it shouldn't be what man focuses on. But race is something that, in Hegelian form, that we are being forced to focus on, and it's ridiculous in my eyes. But the truth is truth, you know, and white people are becoming the targets for racism in 2017. It's no, you know, and the true, you know, white racism towards brown people hasn't really existed in 100 years. I say, you know, it's not. And even when it was, you know, it's been changed. You know, it isn't what it used to be. I think most white people aren't racist inherently. I can't see why they would be. It just doesn't make any sense to me that that's kind of a battle people still kind of see happening in the world. But of course, I don't see it, because I'm privileged and I'm white, obviously. So what do I know? Right, anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap this up now. I have no real finishing comments other than, you know, thanks for watching. If you like what you see, you can always contribute on Patreon, or donate one time on PayPal. All that's in the description box below. We will win this battle against paedophilia. You know, as long as I'm alive, I'm not going to take this sitting down. You know, I'm not going to let them get away with saying what they're saying, and each and every one of us has to critique these bastards. We have to keep our eye on them because they're sneaky, and the agenda's being pushed hard. Stay strong, everybody. You know, have faith in God. Live your life. When it comes to the Mandela effect, understand that it's very easy in the truth of culture to get bogged down on one subject to the point where it drives you insane. My recommendations, if you're in that state and you're like that girl was, you know, giving up all hope with your situation, I'd recommend you leave YouTube for a good month or two and get back into living life normally, working, eating, sleeping, drinking, spending time with loved ones and family, not discussing or talking about these things, but getting involved in sorting your own life out and getting your world in order, and you'll feel much better and more centered and organized and orientated. And then once you come back to the internet, and I know it's not easy to just go back into the world and watch normal videos. You're probably going to watch conspiracy videos, but maybe try a different topic. That's my advice to you, and you'll feel much better. And you'll grow from that experience because you'll learn new things. That's all I'd recommend. I know it's interesting, but you can't view everything through the lens of Mandela effect. There are many other ways to interpret the information you're finding. So on that note, God bless everybody. Thanks for listening. I really do appreciate it. And I'll be back soon. I can't promise this will be a weekly gig like it used to because I work full time now, but I'll be back soon, guys. Take it easy. Thank you.